Hi guys, in today's tutorial we will see how to create a login form. And if you remember that code we have seen in our previous tutorial, basically this was all the code that we have created in our previous tutorial. And let me show you the output. What was the output till our previous tutorial that we have created. So this was the code and this was the output. And here whenever I type any name or any text, you can see that whenever I click on that button, it is showing that value at the top with the hello. So this was our basically previous code. So let me have a quick overview on our previous tutorial. I am just minimizing that code, Control B, and here let me show you that we had basically two use states, and I told you that why we have to use here two use states, and this was a function which is called when any change happens on this text field, and this is the function which is called when we click on the submit button. So this was the code that we had seen. uh, Basically this is the on click. This is function. Whenever we click on that button, this function is called, and I have told you what is basically the value and on change, and we are just calling the function on change on this text type. So today's tutorial we have to see how to basically create a login form, and we will see that all the data we would enter will be displayed at here with hello, because we don't have any database for the time being. So we just have to fetch all the values and show the values with hello. So basically the very first thing that we have to do is just copy and paste that field, because login form would basically require two text fields. First field is for username or ID, and the second field is for password. So let me move in our code, and here I am going to copy that code, Control C, and here I have to paste that code, Control V. Here I have to type enter password, and I have here value, and here I have basically on change function. So what I have to do, the very first thing, we have to change our name here. I am just writing PSW, abbreviation of password basically. So here I have to use a useState const, and here I am just taking PSW set PSW is equal to useState, and the initial value of this PSW would be empty. So now I have to basically set PSW when any change occurs on this our text field. This is basically our second text field. So how can we do that? This was our first text field. Let me show you the code. So this was our first text field in which we had to write our first name. We have basically a value. The value name is passed here. This was also initially empty, and whenever any change occurs, this function is called. And when this function is called, which is as func, so here I have to set the value. Now one thing that we have to do is whenever our initial value of this PSW is empty, so with the help of set PSW, we have to fetch data from our password, and I am just going to take it as test, because if I write here password, you would not be able to see the text that I have written here. So that's why I am just taking here as text. So I am not going to use here text input type password. So what can I do now? When this function is called by our first text field, this code will be run. But whenever this function is called by our second input field, what would happen? Set PSW, and here event dot target dot value. So whenever our first text field would make some changes, this set name should be called, and whenever our second text field is basically changing something, we should have to set our password with that second use state. So how can we do that? And this part is basically I am going to take as a second function. Let me have changes here, function 2, and here I am taking just as function 1. These are just names, and here I am just going to take another function. Function 2 is equal to, we have to take fat arrow function, and we can pass any value, it doesn't matter, it is just a parameter depending on us. I'm just taking as E, so I'm just going to copy that code, Control V. So we can use basically these two elements in single function, but let me explain in more deep so that you may come to know that how basically our functions are working. So here, whenever any change occurs on first text field, this function is called, and whenever any change happens in our second text field, this function is called. Now what we have to do, whenever we click on that submit button, so this function is called. What can we do now? Whenever this function is called, which is submit, we have to take basically same use states that we had for the first text field. Here I am just going to take const new PSW, and here I am going to take set new PSW is equal to, I am just going to take its initial value as empty as well. So here new PSW is initially empty, so whenever this function is called, the value of new PSW should be updated with the value of PSW, which is basically our updated value here. This is our updated value on every change occurs in our text field. So here we have to type set new name, and inside this new name I am just going to pass PSW. So this is all. So let me display it as well. Here I am just talking new PSW. Just press Ctrl S and let me show you the output. How is it basically working? And whenever I click on that submit button, you can see we have fetched our sample but not engineer. So what was the problem? Let me see. New name is also called whenever any change occurs on our func1 function. Oh, we had a mistake that both of these are basically same, so we have to make changes. These should not be same. Control C, and here I am going to just paste it. Control V. And this state is basically to update our name, and this state is to update our PSW. So mistakenly I had same both of them. Just press Ctrl S and move to our output, and here I am just going to write my names, and whenever I click on the button you can see that both values are fetched successfully and are displayed with the hello. So this was all, and I have told you that why we have basically used 4 use states, and this one function is called when our first text field make any change. So and this function is called when our second text field is making some changes, and this function is called on submit button. One thing more that I have to tell you in our this tutorial, so why I have not used here form tag. So let me now use here form tag. Press Ctrl X to minimize that code. So I am just using form tag here. Ctrl V, and here I have to also minimize that code and copy it and paste it inside that form. Ctrl V, and here we have to type submit. Where is the button? This one is the button basically. Ctrl X, we have to also write that button code inside that form. Ctrl V, and here I am just going to make its type button type as submit. Just press Ctrl S and let me move on our screen. And now whenever I click on that button, page is basically going to refresh when by clicking on that button. So let me show you what is the issue whenever this button is basically pressed. I'm just going to write engineer, and you can see that whenever the page is loaded, it would not show anything because the page is basically going to refresh. I have pressed, and now you can see that just for some time interval it was shown here, but after some time the page was refreshed, and when this page is refreshed, our all the data is erased. So that's why I have not used here form tag. So I can also write here, this is also a good method, but in most use cases it is not here using. We have to use here inside that function onSubmit, and here I am just going to write that function name. Just press Ctrl S and click here, and now you can see the same result as we had in our previous part of this tutorial. Now you can see that here it was same, and after reloading or refreshing of that page, our code was basically removed. Let me make that. How can we set in this case we are just making whenever this form is submitted, so here the page is refreshing, so I have to use set default. How can we set default? Just write event dot prevent, and here you can see the option. I am just going to pass event, and I am just taking the name as same event. Now this function is taking event, basically any event that is occurred. Here I have to also make it as function. Just press Ctrl S, and now whenever we write anything here, you can see that the page is not refreshed. This is just because of we have prevented default behavior of that form.